Hi, this is Maria Brown with Palmas Dream Homes, and today I am with attorney Jennifer Odell. She's the one who helps us in the closings. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you
Hi,
for joining
Maria.
us.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for having us. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I have some questions for you so you can help our clients regarding how is it to do a closing in Puerto Rico. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do before, during, and after the closing?
Yes, of course. In Puerto Rico, closings are very different from closings in the United States. Here, the notary is an attorney that helps with the whole transaction, not representing one party against the other, but representing all parties in the transaction. So what we do is once the realtor has already the agreement on the parties with the price and the parties, then the case is referred to the attorney, and the attorney, first thing we do is we get a title study of the property to verify the legal status of the property. A title study is a document prepared by a title company reviewing the records at the Registry of Property and basically to verify who is the owner of the property, if there are any liens on the property, if there's a mortgage on the property, or if there's any issues such as an inheritance on the property. We also check property taxes in Puerto Rico to make sure that the property is in the name of the seller, the owner, and if there are any debts on the property or undue exoneration. Once we have the title study, then what I do is I communicate with the parties, and then if there's any lien or issue that we need to work with and cancel, we work with that also. But then assuming that everything is looking good, then we communicate with the buyer and the seller, and we start preparing the purchase sale deed. The purchase sale deed is a document that's going to be signed at the closing, which we do here also different from the US. We do it in person, and we all sit together at a table. It's kind of a celebratory activity where we're all together, and the buyer buys, the seller sells, and that's when the title is transferred. After the closing, then we sign the purchase sale deed, either in person or through a POA, and then after the closing, I do normally three things. I file the deed at the Registry of Property, I'll file the change of owner in CRIM, and I file the planilla, the form at the Treasury Department. I need to clarify that's in cash sales. If there's a bank involved, then I will just execute the purchase sale deed, and the bank attorney will file the change of owner for CRIM and the purchase sale deed at the Registry of Property.
What happens when you have a property that it's been an inheritance and it was a marriage who owned the property and they have children who are also inheriting the property? What's the procedure, and then how's the split?
Okay, well, it's very important that when one of the spouses passes away, that the whole probate procedure is done before the closing, because in Puerto Rico it's a process that is lengthy and take a few months, and it needs to be done before the closing. So the probate has three steps basically. First of all, we need to see if there is a will or not. If there is no will, then we have to do the procedure in court to obtain the resolution of declaration of heirs, and then we need to obtain death certificate of the deceased person and marriage certificate if they're married, and birth certificate of the offspring. And then once we obtain the resolution of declaration of heirs, then the parties need to file a form at Treasury Department to obtain a release from the Treasury Department. Once the release is obtained from the Treasury Department, then they need to file a petition at the Registry of Property so that the property is recorded in the name of the heirs. Until those three steps are done, then the property cannot be sold. And in Puerto Rico, if there is no will and the spouses own the property together as part of a conjugal property, then first we split the property. So there's a liquidation of a conjugal property. So 50% will go to the living spouse, and then the other 50% will be divided between the widower, and the offspring. And that's actually a change in the Civil Code of Puerto Rico of 2020, because before it was different, but now the widower inherits together with the offspring of the couple. If there are minor children, then a judicial procedure needs to be performed in order to obtain authorization to sell the property. And in Puerto Rico, different than in the United States, minor children are minors until they're 21 age old.
Can you explain us a little bit about the process when you do a prenup or postnup when you have a property and you want to buy or sell a property?
Yes, that's also one of the recent changes in Puerto Rico law system. Before, you needed to do a prenup before you got married. Recently, a new law was passed where now you can modify your prenup or create a postnup. So now you can change the regime of your marriage during the marriage. For example, a property can be privately owned by a person if it was obtained through inheritance, or purchased before the couple was married, or purchased after the couple was married but with a nuptial agreement, being a prenup or a postnup.
What happens when we have a person who wants to buy or sell a property in Puerto Rico, but they can't be physically here? How do you work with a power of attorney for the people who want to buy or sell?
Well, that's something that we work with all the time now because people travel so much. So it's not a problem. We do it all the time. First, we see if the person that's going to buy or sell the property is in Puerto Rico. And in that case, we can do the POA here in Puerto Rico. Oh, one important thing is that POAs here are done through public deeds that need to be prepared, signed by the person, and filed at the Registry of Powers of Attorney. So if the person is in Puerto Rico, then we do the POA here in Puerto Rico and we file it at the Registry of Powers of Attorney. The person doing the POA needs to designate someone else that's going to be physically in Puerto Rico at the closing. If the person executing the POA is not in Puerto Rico, for example, if they're in the US or in another country, then what we do is we prepare the POA, we send it to that person by email, and then that person needs to notarize it in the United States or in the other country and get also a validation of the notary signature. Then they send it to us, and we do a deed of protocolization of power of attorney and file it at the Registry of Powers of Attorney. So it's a little bit different than the process in the US, but it can be done.
What is the difference when you're doing a closing that is a cash purchase versus something that is financed?
When the closing is financed, there's going to be two deeds signed at the closing. The purchase sale deed, and then the bank is going to have an attorney execute the deed of mortgage. And when the transaction is financed, the bank is the one regulating most of the aspects of the transaction. First, they need to approve the loan to the borrower, and then they also are the ones that actually prepare the settlement statements and do the disbursements. But the parties still get to choose who's the attorney notary preparing the purchase sale deed, and then there's going to be the other attorney preparing the deed of mortgage. In that case, my role is more limited. I just I get the title study from the bank, I prepare the purchase sale deed, and then I execute it at the closing. If the transaction is cash, then it's a little bit different because then we're more involved in the whole transaction and we work mostly as a team. First of all, the first part of the team is the real estate agent who puts together the buyer and the seller and obtains all the main agreements as to the price, the property, and all of that. And then the second part of the team is me. I get the title study, I obtain the title study to verify the legal status of the property, prepare the purchase sale deed, discuss it with the parties before the closing, and then we all meet at the closing. And then the third part of the transaction is a closing agent who prepares the title study and receives all the statements of different HOAs and CRIM and any mortgages that may be due. And before the closing, a few days before the closing agent sends the settlement statement to the parties review it, and once they approve it, then the closing agent receives the wire usually or the funds from the buyer to be disbursed at closing. So then we all come together at the closing, which is a place where usually the realtor comes and just check that everything is okay. The notary attorney has the parties sign the purchase sale deed, and the closing agent then disperses the funds at the closing.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We hope you find this helpful.
Thank you for having me, Maria, and looking forward to many more closings.